Hey everyone, welcome in. Thank you for joining me. My name is Marlene, and this is the Light Service. This is a podcast message to help bring hope into your life in situations that you may be going through. Today's message is about a backup plan and how we, in our human experience, we oftentimes make backup plans, who's involved in our backup plans, why do we make them, and how many times have we been somebody else's backup plan. So recently I've had I've had some experiences where I really just had to sit with myself. I had to gather my thoughts. I had to face some truths, and I had to speak some words of protection over myself, over my life, and over my heart. And even the Bible says, guard your heart for everything, above all else, guard your heart for everything you do flows from it. And that's Proverbs 4:23. So this guarding of the heart, right? All of a sudden, when we start feeling like someone's backup plan, we can start guarding our heart. There's one thing about guarding our heart or protecting our heart, but there's another thing when ego is rising up. And the words that are coming to me is, how dare you? Who do you think you are? But I'm going to just give some examples. So let's say, are you a backup plan for a family member who might be going through something? And I say backup plan because it's like everything that they do and say, because you're offering help, for a soft place to land, if you will. And it's like they won't readily or don't feel like they're accepting the help because they want plan A to work out. And I understand that, right? Plan A to work out. But what the thing is that plan A ends up being a leap where people are in the air, right? And that's why people end up creating backup plans, because plan A is, if you want to say, risky for the fact that it's like being in the air. You're not sure where you're going to land, right? Something is up in the air. And then, so there's a couple situations. Everybody wants plan A, right? That's what they want to work out. But then it's like, well, I know that this might be, it's unsure, it's risky, not positive about things. So like to have plan B or plan C in place in case plan A doesn't unfold the way that one is imagining in their mind, the way that someone is telling them, but they're maybe not so sure that somebody's being on the up and up. They know that plan B is more safe, right? More secure. It's like when someone opens a business and they're taking a risk. They want to take that leap of faith, if you will, right? But plan B is the job with the regular paycheck. Plan A is up in the air, right? So plan B could look like, okay, I'll hang on to a part-time job for a while, or I'll have one set up that I can work in case I need to do it. Plan C might be, I won't burn that bridge with a previous employer in case plan A fails, right? So it's like these, what's coming to me is like dominoes. I'm having a vision of dominoes. Now let's take another example, a past love, right? Um, who let's see, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at some notes here. It could be a past love, right? So a backup plan. So meaning somebody, and really in all of these cases, it could be where someone thinks the grass is greener somewhere else, right? Whatever that is. And that doesn't mean it isn't. It just, these are just the words that are coming to me. So someone wants to try something new, whether that, whatever that is, like, if it's a relationship, if it's a new job, whatever that is. Um, but in a situation where you're feeling like a backup plan in a um, whether it be a romantic situation, a loving relationship, a partnership, where you knew at one time you were never a backup plan, you were the plan. But something shifted and you started to feel like a backup plan. And that's the same thing that can happen um, with like a family situation, right? So, say parents, kids move out, and the parents have always been the main plan, right? But then they meet someone, and then all of a sudden, this other someone becomes the main plan, and the parents become the backup plan, right? I don't know why the words the fall guy just came to me, which is kind of interesting. All right, the next one is the friend. So when I was younger and say I'd go out to meet someone, and we didn't have cell phones at that time. And so you just go meet them wherever it was. And then it's like they're not there. It's a big place. You're trying to find them. You have to use the phone and you're trying to track them down. And it's like, where are you? What's going on? They answer the phone. Oh, I decided to go do this instead. Now you're there. You're dressed. You're ready. Now there is a greater plan in all of this. But in the moment that it's happening, you're like, really? Right? Really? But part of that lesson is learning how to protect your heart, right? Part of that lesson is learning how to set up some boundaries, to take care of yourself. People talk about watching out for number one. Well, there is something about that, but not from an egotistical standpoint. It's about um, self love, right? So these are the things that teach us to love ourselves. These are also the things that teach us about forgiveness and grace, um, that we are always extended in our journey, right? But this helps us to extend that out to others. Now, I also want to take a moment and I want to talk about backup plans from the perspective of the chakras. So, and then also just a moment about like the Bible, and I may not quote this quite right, but and because I don't have it in front of me, but we can look at this same type of subject from different perspectives, right? But so the Bible talks about the devil that comes to like separate, kill, steal, and destroy. The devil is really our thoughts. Where are our thoughts going? Are they higher vibrating thoughts or are they lower vibrating thoughts? Okay. There's also this idea of separate and conquer, right? So we have to ask ourselves who or what in our life is causing separation. And sometimes it is the divided self, right? It is the divided self. When we are feeling one way, but we're saying another. When we're thinking one thing, but we're doing another. That is the divided self. We are not in alignment with our soul, our higher self. We are all over the board, okay? So the chakra system is an energetic system that aligns with our spine. And each of these chakras, it's an energy system, and each of these energy centers are affiliated with various parts of our body. So if say someone has a sore knee, that would be something to do with the root chakra or basic needs, something like that. Okay, but it is well known that the masculines operate out of the lower chakras. Women operate out of the higher chakras. Okay, so when we take the lower chakras, we have the root chakra. So that's our basic needs. And so that, like, for example, men providing, right? Being providers. Then you go to the sacral chakra, which is about our joy center or sexual energy, not just sexual, but like our joy center, whatever that is, right? But it includes that. The solar plexus chakra is about our power, right? Taking action. It is our power center. And then the next one up is the heart. This is this place where we meet in the middle. That's like, okay, this place where we can kind of meet in the middle. So these ones would be what would be considered more of the masculine chakras. All right. And so, and I'm not, we all embody masculine and feminine energies. So we understanding that right off the bat. But so if we are operating in our lower chakras, right, the ego can get in the way because we're trying to provide. It could be like, I need to do this, puffing up the chest, if you will. Joy center, like playing a lot. Solar plexus, taking action, movement. It's 9/11 right now. I do want to mention that. February 15th at 9:11 a.m. So there could be something that is feeling urgent, if you will. Something about this situation, a backup plan that is feeling urgent. Maybe you are someone who is in a situation who needs a backup plan, or you've been blowing off the backup plan. It's barely even coming to mind, but you're getting your back against the wall, and all of a sudden you're like, I need a backup plan. I need, you didn't get much time to think about plan B because plan A fell apart right in front of you, right? And so these are the things to, think about. So I want to go back to the, so I'm gonna leave that for a moment with the, well, I'll go a little bit further with those chakras just so we kind of have this in place. So we have the heart chakra, which is represented by green, and then we have the throat chakra, which is represented by blue. So women speaking what's on their minds, right? More women would speak what's on their mind versus stuffing it, right? Men tend to put the emotion aside. It was just 222 megabytes, which speaks of healing. Stuff the emotions and just do what needs to be done. Take the action, right? But women would be more likely to speak what's on their mind. And then the next one is the intuition, or the third eye, represented by purple. And women are well known to have a stronger intuition. And then the other one is the crown chakra, operating and connecting with spirit. And so those would be more of the feminine energy. Okay, so when things happen like this and we become someone's backup plan, from our human earthly experience, how do we feel? Think about any time you self-recognized that you were someone's backup plan, and how many times this has happened over the course of your life. Maybe it's happening now. Maybe it happened, at various stages, right? So we all have various lessons. But how do we feel? We might judge the other person and think, well, they're whatever because they don't show up. They don't keep their word. They don't, whatever. We might ask why. Why are they doing this? Why are they behaving that way? We might feel very hurt from actions of others that leave us feeling in that, or sitting in that place. We might have a lot of pain from being somebody else's backup plan. We could possibly have anger from being somebody's backup plan. And when this stuff all starts arising, especially more anger or frustration and pain too, like how dare a person put me in this position, especially if it happens repeatedly, where you start seeing the pattern. If you've known someone for a while and it happens once, or once is like, giving grace, whatever. A second time, you're like, A third time, you start seeing the patterns, and this is where you start to guard your own heart, because you're like, there's more to this story, right? But anyway, so these are things that we feel. We might have judgment come up. We might say, why? We might feel hurt, have pain. We might have anger, frustration, and what goes with that? The ego. The ego is stepping in, saying like, right? How dare they? Now this mentality, if you will, is the smaller self speaking. We talk about our smaller self and our higher self, and our higher self is tuned more into the frequency of spirit, if you will. The small self is more involved in the physical journey, right? Things that we can touch, of our five senses. The spiritual journey is more tapping into like that sixth sense, that knowing, trusting, the intuition. That's why, the upper chakras, there, this will come up here. But let's just continue on. So, just taking a moment here, yet again, to just say in reflection, where have I been someone's backup plan, and how did I feel about it at the time, and did it continue on, and what did I do? How did I handle it? Did I have an outburst with them? Did I cut them off? Did I blow them off? Did I tell them, what's going on? Did I end a relationship? Now, this is also really interesting. So my kitties got into these rubber bands that I have that are shaped, and nothing happens by coincidence. I had been writing this. I took a break. I stepped out for a minute, and I came, and there was a rubber band on the floor, and it is a pink dove, the shape of a pink dove, which says to look for peace in this situation, right? Pink is about healing. Okay. So, and it's interesting, I have goosebumps on both legs, and it's, we are the day after Valentine's Day. So, this could have something to do with being a backup plan in love. Okay. Now, let's see. I'm going to just go on to my next thing here. Now, if you are operating out of your higher chakras, you in offering someone a backup plan because you see what they cannot, because you're seeing things from a higher position, if you will. As some people say, you see the writing on the wall, which is a dramatic account that comes from the Bible. It's a dramatic account of divine judgment that was found in Daniel chapter 5 of the Bible. Now, I just have to say this because I literally just put my Valentine's reading up this morning, February 15th. I don't know if I was going to post it or not. I have kind of this gap in this thing where I was looking for something that I was going to tap into, and I don't know, I was having a hard time splitting the video and cutting that out. But anyway, I didn't even know how to do it. I ended up just posting it just now because this one card came up yesterday, and it talks about a finger pointing to a problem. And when you go into the Bible, in fact, I want to click on this quick. When you go into the Bible and you read this situation about the writing on the wall, let's see. When you read the situation about the writing on the wall, sorry, the part of it I had up here disappeared. Let's see. Oh, it talks about 3 reasons to guard your heart. Um, Hold on. Well, the writing on the wall, let's just take a moment. Basically, it's because there was opulence happening in a situation, and people were idolizing like and things and gold, and it was just like the situation, right? So anyway, I'm sorry, I wish I could read it right here. I had it pulled up. Hold on. um Here it is. I'm going to read this. It says, so they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wife and his concubines, drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold, silver, and bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall near the lampstand in the royal palace. To whom did this hand belong? Says it was just a hand, just fingers. It might have been the same hand that wrote the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai, Almighty God. It might have been the same hand that wrote in the dirt in John 8, the Son of God. It may have been the same hand of an angel or an archangel, but it must have appeared with such force and ominous drama that suddenly the room became as still as death. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. What this problem means is that he stood to see what was happening, and his legs gave way and he fell to the floor. The king summoned the enchanters, the astrologers, and diviners, and then he said to these wise men of Babylon, whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom. Why the third highest? Nabonidus was the high king. Belshazzar was the de facto king. That left the third place, the place of the prime minister, available to anyone who could interpret the writing. Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew more pale. His nobles, were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet hall. May the king live forever, she said. Commentators and historians from the time of Joseph think that this was the queen mother, the king's mother or grandmother. She remembered a man who had served I know I'm going to say his name wrong. Nebuchadnezzar, the man Daniel, she said. Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who had the spirit of the holy gods in him. It is in the time of your father, he was found to have insight, intelligence, and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He did this because Daniel, who the king called, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams. So they asked what the writing meant. Without me going into super great detail, there was like an issue with this. And there were, 3 different definitions that came up regarding it. But I'm going to just get back to this. I find it very interesting that this came up after that card came up yesterday about the finger, the pointing finger, which is then this comes up as I went to, as I was writing, I wrote the words, the writing on the wall. And then I went to look up that story. And I was like, oh my gosh, that card just came out. And so these are how things unfold, right? So let's just go a little bit further here. So if someone is in their higher chakras, offering someone a backup plan because they see what this other person cannot, or has some people say, or as some people say, the writing on the wall, they offer it because they see what the person cannot. I would like to look at the word backup plan right now. When we are operating only from our earthly or 3D experience, a backup plan is something that we choose as a second, third, or even fourth option to what one would like to do or experience first, right? The thing is that the first plan is often a big leap or some sort some sort of leap. It's something like that, where things, including one leaping, may be in the air for some time because they don't know all the answers. They don't know how or where they will land. And now what was coming to me is it may feel like one might have to land a big jet without ever having flying lessons, right? So they can have a hard landing. When things are up in the air, like an airplane that has turbulence, right? It can feel like a bumpy ride. In other words, a bumpy ride, or when it comes to the landing, it can feel like a hard or a rough landing. Now, this is really interesting because as I took the break, I have kittens, and what was happening is I could see one of them like looking for this place to jump up, right? And they were analyzing the situation, like, should I go there to jump up or should I go there to jump up? So even the cats make backup plans, right? They're like, are they assessing the situation? Which one's going to get me there the highest, the fastest, the most effective, in with the most safety, right? And so we're doing the same thing as the cats are doing, or the cats are doing the same things that we do, right? But the other thing that came to me is this idea of when things are up in the air, we don't know where we'll land yet. The idea of a quantum leap or quantum jump in that television show from the late 70s called Quantum Leap, where every time this guy's basically just trying to make it home, right? After some experiment. And every time he leaps, he lands somewhere, but he never knows where he's going to land, right? He doesn't know what situation he's going to have to get himself out of or deal with. So, either way, this calls for us to do a check in with ourselves. Think about, okay, so I'm going to give some examples of backup plans. Again, the friend. Are we somebody's backup plan friend? Now, of course, there are many situations where we totally understand that, and I'll give an example. So I have a friend that when we were kids, I always knew what kind of music I liked, but we went to concerts that weren't really my thing. But we had fun and we made it work and such. But as I grew older and I knew about who I was and what kind of music I liked and how I was going to spend my money, if you will, I knew what that was, and so did she. And so it just was what it was. But on the other hand, have been friends for a long time. So if she had plans with another friend to go and it was last minute and that person got sick, she might call me. I might be her backup plan. Now, am I going to hold any grudges about that? No, because she knew originally that wasn't really my thing. I might go because I'm her friend. Um, Backup plans are, so there's different things. But when it feels like, say there's two friends that equally like the same music, but the friend won two tickets, but they chose one person to go. They chose one person over another to go. And then at the last minute, they call the second person to say, oh, the first person I invited can't go. Can you? Right? So the second person might be super excited and goes, but later they might sit with it and go, why didn't I get a call in the first place? Right? So it just feels, however, these are lessons. You could be the backup girlfriend or boyfriend or love interest. The other thing that's coming to me is like, if you've ever been dancing, we used to go dancing when we were younger, and um, someone would come to the table and ask somebody to dance, and that person would be like, no, and say there was a group of gals sitting there. Then they'd look around, and then they'd pick somebody else. Do you want to dance? No. And so they kind of go down the line, and it was like the more people they asked, the more the no got louder, if you will. Like, no, no, I'm not your backup plan, But some people are like, yeah, I want to dance. Um, Okay, the next one would be a backup plan. Let's say a job or a company or an employer that was really good to a person, right? But let's say this person has some shiny opportunity offered to them, and they decide that they're going to take it. Now, they tell their boss or whatever about it, and this boss knows more about it, but the person doesn't want to hear about it. They just want to go. And so they don't want to burn the bridge with the boss, but the boss kind of feels like they might be coming back, right? But it still doesn't necessarily feel good, especially if they've treated this person really well, this type of thing. So the person leaves and whatever unfolds. But the boss or the company, they know that they are a backup plan if what are these words? If all else fails. All else, right? That's when you know you're the backup plan. Um, the parent who doesn't have full custody of their children, they're oftentimes the backup plan. Like, we'll fit you in to have parenting duties if all else fails. The grandparents who want to see their grandkids, but they rarely get to. And all of a sudden, when the person's in a pinch, now that grandparent's good enough because they are now the backup plan. I guess we'll make it work because the other thing that I want to experience or do won't happen unless I use you as a backup plan. The child of parents whose interests are maybe the same as child A or B. But say there's child C. Child C. And say they're adults. Everyone's adults. It's not about age. So the parents choose to do something with child A or B because their interests are the same. They don't ask child C because it doesn't seem to make sense, even though child C would like to be invited, but they maybe gave up on being invited because they realized that they were being option C, especially when it came to certain interests. Maybe child C said no for some time because other things were going on in their life. But then they stopped getting invited. So now they were not plan A or B, they were plan C. And they got invited only if things fell apart or only if things didn't work out. The same with a sibling. Planning stuff with other siblings. But if something falls apart with that, then calling another sibling because it is better than going alone or better than doing something alone. And all of these things happen in our life. And it doesn't mean that we have to go around with hardened heart. But this is about taking care of our heart and recognizing patterns and seeing things for what they truly are and being honest with ourselves. Being honest with ourselves. Am I okay with this? And why am I okay with it? When people say don't be somebody else's doormat, right? When does that change? It changes when we say no. It changes when we choose ourselves. It changes when we start saying yes to what we would like to experience, what we would like to move towards. It changes when we stop waiting for others to choose us. How many times have you been or felt like the backup plan over various stages in your life? Or how did you handle it? Right? Did you just put up with it for a while because maybe you lived in a certain neighborhood as a kid? I remember we lived in a neighborhood at a certain point. Anyway, there was all either little boys or little girls all around, whatever it was. But, and then we moved to a different neighborhood and it was the opposite. And so, like, that shifted, right? It shifted for our family members of like what was going on. When somebody used to be able to pick up the phone and call anyone and go, hey, would you like to go do this? And there was always people around to do something. You know, usually the first call was a yes, and that was that. But when it got, when that got flipped on its head, if you will, then things changed. So now we are being called to look at and to consider, who did we use as backup plans over our life? And to be honest with ourselves about it. Is there an apology that could be made? Amends. Because now you've grown up. Maybe you've gotten less busy. Now you're looking back and you're like, yeah, maybe I could have handled that situation better. It's all right to call the person. It's all right to send a nice letter. It's all right to take them to lunch. And maybe that time has gone by, but it's okay even to acknowledge it from the level of spirit that I've grown as a person, right? I've grown as an individual. I've grown as a soul on my journey. Because, of course, in their journey, they had the same type of situation or the same type of experience. It's just, not the same details, if you will, right? Think about parents. What's coming to me is when one parent, let's say a parent who does not live with the kids, but that person is always put on a pedestal versus the one who's always there day in, day out, right? Providing for everything. But then, a kid gets a chance to see this other parent. Of course, the kids put them on a pedestal. But the parent who's doing all the main stuff can definitely feel like they were the backup plan. And why does that happen? Because kids push the one that they know will still be around. They push the strongest ones. They test their boundaries in that way. So the other thing with backup plans to consider, and this is kind of big, it is intention. Okay, so when we place someone as a backup plan, what is our intention? Like, intentions might be like definitely fair and understandable, but is it like, is the intention desperation and I will only go if, right? If all else fails, I really don't want to, but if I really have to, I will. Are you drug into a backup plan, kicking and screaming? Feeling like somebody else made you do this backup plan? Feeling like somebody made you set up the backup plan? Let's look at intention. So I'm going to give you an example. A long time ago, I had a party, a client party, and I had rented this boat, and the boat could only hold so many people. Now, I knew my clients pretty well, and so it would be like, I would consider the area in which they lived, how far would they have to drive, Did they have like little kids? Would this be a difficult event for them to go to because it was for adults? So I like in creating my invite list, there were only so many people I could invite. All right, that was so many years ago, right? I just don't remember what my metrics were for invitations, if you will. Did I invite the clients who I did the most business with? Did I invite investors? Who did I invite? I don't really remember exactly. However, what happened, like at this one particular party, and by the way, it had ordered all the food and all the stuff for all of this, but now all of a sudden there was inclement weather. And personally, I was like 40 minutes away from this. And the weather was really shifting. Now the boat had a cover on it. It was a big boat, but I was starting to get phone calls that, ooh, they're not going to drive in that weather. So I was starting to get, when the boat was supposed to be full, I was starting to get calls that this isn't going to work out. Now, all of a sudden space was opening up on the boat. So what I wanted to do, because I know there were other people I wanted to invite, but I had to limit the list because of the size of the boat. It's like a wedding list, right? You want to invite everybody, but sometimes that's not just the way it is. And so I started calling other people to say, hey, I've got this boat. And it was short notice, but I loved that some of the people were like, yeah, I'll come. That sounds great. And without having to go into great explanation. And actually, some of the people that I invited, they were not clients. I just called friends and whatever, because the original thing was a client thank you, if you will. So I just called people and said, hey, I have people who can't come. You want to come on the boat and have some fun? And it worked out. Everything works out like it's supposed to, right? But what was the intention behind it? Is it to make another feel some sort of way? Okay, so as soon as I was getting cancellations, I reached out to others. Okay. Again, same thing with wedding lists or invites. So now I want to talk about God. So, God, the earthly experience. In the earthly experience, our backup plan, God is our backup plan oftentimes when we are operating out of our lower chakras, right? But once we start moving up in our chakras, once we even start moving up and we are in our heart space, God doesn't become the backup plan. God is the plan. We start seeking more. We start wondering, what were all these experiences we were having when we were in our lower chakras, right? Whether it had to do with our basic needs or greed, right? Which had to do with the root chakra. Whether it had to do with working our life away or partying too much, which has to do with the sacral, the sacral chakra, our joy center, right? Or did it have to do with our power center? Did we try to take other people's power away based on our ego? Or did someone take our power away because we gave it away? So we start to look at all these experiences that we had. And as we start healing all that stuff and moving up into our chakras, we start moving into our heart space and our throat chakra, being able to express ourselves without taking another down, without belittling them, without making someone feel less than. What we do is we grow up and we start feeling our own pain without pointing fingers. We start to learn we are here for soul evolution. And some of that evolution hurts. We're here to have these highs and lows of emotions, to feel greatly, because when we are in our higher stuff, there's like a less of the emotion, highs and lows, like the pendulum swinging. It's like more peaceful. We start to step into this observer role. And we just see things for what they are without all the emotion leading us, right? Again, the observer role. So now, when we look at the backup plan from a higher perspective, you could say that those who are operating from their higher selves, or like the crown chakra, the intuition, etc., even the heart and up, they're tapping into more. Not only are they aware that they are oftentimes another person's backup plan, they're aware of it. But it's actually, let's see, I'm sorry, I have to look, I wrote this kind of small here. But they also notice that know that this other person or people or whoever are operating in their lower chakras. It's actually this person who's in their higher chakra who is trying to help another get back up. It's like they're holding the light, they're holding the space, they're observing this person's lessons and situations and whatever. But they're helping the person get back up. Now, when you are someone who is operating from your higher self, that you can still have things creep in, like the ego, like, why won't they help? Let me help them. Why can't they see this, right? Because you see it clearly. Why, right? So you ask yourself these questions, but eventually you start to grow out of that. It takes time. It's a practice, right? And you start to just go, loving people where they're at, wherever they're at on their journey. It's about love and non-judgment, observation, understanding that they're having lessons, they're having their own soul growth. You have forgiveness, healing of the heart, right? Instead of that other stuff of the judgment and the why and they hurt me and the pain and the ego, right? Okay, so what else do we have? Oh. Well, okay, so I opened this book this morning and I find this actually interesting. And the book is called His Princess Every Day. It's a devotional by Sherry Rose Shepherd. I'm just going to read part of this. It speaks about a love letter and royalty. And what this message is about is the fact that we've been chosen. I'm going to read this. Dear my beloved daughter, you are royalty even when you don't feel like a princess. How you feel about yourself will never change the truth of who you are. However, just as I have chosen you, right? It's in our lower chakras when we're still fighting and doing all this stuff and trying to get through our survival mode and our power kicks and our ego and all this stuff. I'm inviting you to choose me over the world. So if we look at the world as being part of the lower chakras, if you will, the lower chakras, and spirit moving into the higher chakras. It says, if you are willing, I am here, right? I am here. I'm here in these higher chakras. I'm here in the lower chakras too, but you will see me more as you learn forgiveness and give yourself grace and others grace in this type of thing. You will learn more about me as you seek me, right? It says, I believe in you and I will wait for you until you are ready to step into your appointed position. I am well aware that you don't know where to start or how to become what I have called you to be. So start by recognizing who I am. I am the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and your Daddy in heaven. If you will make time to be still and to pray and to read my word each day, I will paint an eternal picture of the amazing life I have to offer you. The next page says, look, I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and we will share a meal together as friends. That's Revelations 3:20. basically the message continues on about searching, seek and you shall find, right? So it's really interesting, you know, depending upon where you are in your life. Not everybody makes God a backup plan because they grew up in going to church. They learned about who God is or how God works in their life. Even though people are young and their mind is young, you know, they're introduced to these ideas and concepts at a certain age and levels that maybe they can comprehend. But not everybody has any of that in their life. And so they continue on their journey, and then they start to have experiences that are not like everything else they were experiencing. And they feel otherworldly. They feel big. They feel profound. And it is these profound experiences that send people on a journey to seek out a higher way, to seek out more, right? I'm going to go a little bit further. Does being someone's backup plan in the human experience come with a warning? And the reason this came to me is because think about like trucks. When trucks back up, they beep. Not every truck. The bigger the truck, the more beeping it has, right? Or the louder the beep. So what does that mean? It's like the bigger the situation, the more there's a warning sign. Or pay attention to the signs, the beeps. Listen. If you are somebody's backup plan, listen to what does that involve for you. Asking and checking in with your spirit, with your soul. Does me being a backup plan for somebody really resonate with me? How is this serving me? And it's not just about serving the self. Are you serving another, understanding that we all help each other walk each other home, right? And you might be someone's backup plan for a while, but there's a difference between a backup plan and being somebody's doormat. And so this is where we learn to establish boundaries, to take care of our heart, to say no when things are not resonating with us deeply, to maybe give people chances and opportunity. But if the things keep circling around, then if you don't make a different if you don't set some boundaries, then you can be taken advantage of. And so this is about awareness, right? The other thing is, what alarms are going off as you are considering being someone's backup plan? That might be like, why are they calling me now, all of a sudden, out of the blue? Is there a pattern of being somebody's backup plan? That they only call you when? They only call you if? Do you have enough self-respect also to just allow it to be, to give it to God, to set time frames, maybe in the human experience, time frames, to set some boundaries and say, you might say to another person, yes, I am going to do this or whatever for however long, but there are some limits, right? Maybe you're not going to set limits. It just, every situation is different. But you will recognize if somebody's backup plan is affecting you. If you feel like you are being drugged down, right? And so learning to say no when you're thinking no. Learning to say yes when it's a yes. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about with this is that there are situations where I want to take the example of a fountain. Here, I just have to close something out on my screen here. Of a water fountain. Or even like a mountain, like rainwater on a mountain. I want to talk about gravity and the gravity of a situation. So water flows down because it is pumped from the bottom of a fountain, It's pushed up through the top and it gradually overflows going down, right? It all comes from the top. Rain, water, it comes from the top or the higher areas, even though it is the smaller area, right? Like the top of a mountain. So let's take the example of billionaires and philanthropists, where whether it's 1% or 3% of the world's funding is coming, or where is this money? It flows down, right? It flows down. And they realize that they are other people's backup plans. A place of grace, right? A place of observation, a place of non-judgment, a place of love. There are some situations where it's ego driven, right? Where people who have that type of money maybe trying to use that for controlling others, controlling situations, right? But there are others that are operating from that higher perspective. I saw a movie, and I'm sorry, I can't say the name of it, but it was a movie. It's been some time since I've seen it. But it was an older movie, and in that there was this situation where Wall Street had collapsed, and they had to pull, these these wealthy people together to basically help the banks get the economy going again. And so it was just kind of that same type of thing. They were the backup plan to the economy, right? These wealthy people pooled their money to help support the banks and get things back going again. And I really don't have all the details of that right now, but like they knew they didn't sit and wait saying, I'm going to be that backup plan. It's just that when there was a crisis, someone called everyone together and they made a plan to help get the wheels of the economy turning again, right? So backup plans come from different areas, different perspectives. Are you somebody's backup plan? Are you using another person or situation as a backup plan? This is about having grace, appreciation, forgiveness, love, hope, consideration, right? In the situation with a backup plan, whatever that is in your life. So kind of an interesting conversation, however this came up. But I want to say thank you for joining me. I hope that you have an amazing day and take care. Bye.